You do not come here with a position of authority over me. We are equals, we are people, we're citizens of the world, and we sit here as equals. And I see you as my equal, and if you ask me questions, I can ask you questions back. For you to come here and sit down and pretend you're the Gestapo, and that you don't have to answer my questions, is disingenuous, because I don't owe you anything.
Asking questions, and you answer
but I don't owe, no,
however you want.
This is a conversation, and I don't owe you any degree of authority over me, so let's make that clear.
This was rather hilarious. But let's take a step back. What does Andrew Tate versus BBC Gate tell us about the current state of modern mainstream journalism? Andrew Tate is without a doubt a controversial figure. Because of what he says, the way he speaks, his so-called $50 per month online university, or the current human trafficking accusations he's facing in Romania. Some people love him, almost cult-like, while others hate him. Which, I guess, is what a social network personality wants. I'm not going to go into the specifics of his views, simply because I don't watch his clips and don't specifically enjoy any masculinity-oriented content. But I did watch one of his interviews, the BBC one. And I found it particularly interesting because it felt like it was the perfect example of how mainstream media is doing. Spoiler alert, they're not doing so good, at least not the majority. During this 40-minute-long exchange that looked more like a police interrogation, a tense and unorganized BBC journalist tries to set a trap for Andrew Tate by coming up with an agenda, surprising him with aggressive questions and trying to make himself incriminate himself. Not only is the interviewer unable to outsmart Tate, but it seemed like she couldn't come up with any tangible facts whatsoever, nor any strong argument to push Tate to its limits.
They're not.
They experience more control.
So many.
They experience more abuse.
How many?
Enough.
Well,
We can set aside the ethical aspect of the journalist's strategy to lie to Tate about the content of their discussion beforehand in order to make him accept the interview. But there are other things that we can't let go. A renowned newspaper, even when confronted with a controversial figure such as Andrew Tate, cannot emancipate itself from a proper journalistic methodology with facts, proofs, and deduction logic. It can also not emancipate itself from journalistic deontology by not giving the interviewee the opportunity to express himself and by rearranging the interview during editing in order to push their own agenda. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated incident and is more of a trend. Mainstream media is losing people's attention, and by desperately trying to hold on to it, they are accelerating their demise. So what went so wrong in the BBC interview? A journalist is not a judge. While it is fairly appreciated that a journalist gives his or her opinion to a certain extent, it is imperative that a degree of impartiality be kept. In the BBC interview, the journalist is treating Andrew Tate like a convict. But let's keep in mind that he has not been sentenced yet. He is, as we say, innocent until proven guilty. Not only is this behavior intellectually frustrating, but it is also dangerous. Challenging anyone, especially controversial figures, is okay. But making people think that rigged public trials have become the norm is not. A journalist should do his research. During the whole interview, the BBC journalist gave no factual evidence of the accusations against Tate and kept trying to use arguments of authority.
The BBC has spoken to somebody since your arrest who says exactly those things, that with you it's all manipulation, there's an ulterior motive.
Is this Sophie?
Everything
Is this Sophie? Oh, Sophie, the fake name, no face.
Stating that a lot of teachers are saying that one's influence is bad, or that the chairman of one specific organization condemned Tate's actions is good, but not enough. Especially when using such an assertive tone. Just like in the Musk interview, there's a clear lack of facts and therefore research.
Is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed or not, I mean, right, and someone like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK, they will say that. So
look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Right, and as I already said, I don't use that feed. But
then how would you know?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
that's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that feed.
Then how would you know there's hateful content?
Because I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on.
Emotion is not the journalist's best friend. Being a journalist is different from being an artist, and emotion doesn't help. On the contrary, it pushes the journalist to make mistakes. In the interview, the BBC interviewer seemed upset at Tate, not hiding her despise for his persona. She acted as an individual, and not as a BBC employee. Had she kept her calm, she would probably have been able to challenge Tate much more, while still asserting her personal values. So why is mainstream media doing bad like that? Loss of attention because of the competition. As we've mentioned earlier, mainstream media is losing the war of attention. This is even more the case for younger generations who read much less and don't even watch TV anymore. This is, of course, due to the use of social networks and the apparition of a myriad of independent media. These new media have the advantage of being more modern, natives of video-oriented platforms, and viewed as closer to people. It's the last stand for average legacy media outlets. But obviously, the mainstream media cannot let go. So they fight for it. But it's challenging to reinvent decade-old institutions. And with the sector facing difficulties, it's become much harder to attract the needed talent to operate the shift. The result? Mainstream media has become worse at producing instructive and efficient journalist work. At the same time, they have proved unsuccessful at playing the dirty influencer game. As we've seen during the Tate interview, they are not fit for covering polemical subjects in a polarizing way. So is journalism dead? Not at all. It is simply changing, whether for good or bad. Mostly independent small actors, Hugo Decrypt in France for instance, or younger and more modern media outlets are gaining traction. And the best-in-class newspapers such as the Financial Times or The Economist keep thriving because they can produce high-quality, unbiased, and analytical content while staying profitable.
I think we're done.
End of the video. Thanks for watching. Do not hesitate to comment and let us know what you think. And please do not forget to share the video, subscribe, and put the notification bell on so that you don't miss our next release.